Hello and welcome to a stream that has a lot of good news, has a lot of bad news, has a lot of everything in between. We'll stop the music for a little bit because today is quite serious. How cooked are we talking? Medium well, charred. It's probably not good. It's probably not good. There is some good news for Rebirth, however, right? Medium rare, yeah. There's some good news for Rebirth. It is looking like what Hamaguchi says is true. Cammy, hello. We're actually going to take a look at your thread in just a bit here, because I found it really comprehensive and well put together. So I think it's the right thread to look at. But yeah, things are not particularly great, I would say. So, yeah, it is a bit unfortunate, but we're going to go through all the news. We have a little bit of Persona news. Dissidia Duellum is doing well, apparently. Did you see that? I assume it's Wales, though. Really? What the fuck? I did not see that. Is there something I can reference for that? I find that extraordinarily hard to believe. As someone who likes the game, I find that extraordinarily hard to believe. I feel like it's entirely evaporated. Genki tweeted it? Okay, let me make sure I add that to the things that we talk about today. Go ahead and go to that. But I'm just like, I'm a bit floored because I can't believe that that's actually, you know, like, again, I like the game and I'm like, I am in disbelief that, that anyone's playing it. Actually, could you link me? I don't see it. But bro posts so much that I'm not too surprised I don't see it. It's also Cloud's birthday, chat. For those who didn't know. At least, or is it yesterday? I don't fucking know. It was one of them. There's a post stating they're actually profitable for the first time in years across the board. Part of that, though, is that this is the first time, like, or rather, how should I say? Basically, they've been doing nothing but, like, releasing remakes and ports and remasters. So I'm kind of not surprised that they got there. But, like, the real kind of test, I think, is going to be what happens when they start releasing new games, right? Because we are not in the new games era of Square right now. We're very much in the this is the re-release of an older game, you know? I need answers for that thumbnail. It's coming. But I'll tell you right now that essentially what's going to be happening. We're going to be looking at a post from Alex Donaldson over on Reset Era. And if you guys don't know Alex Donaldson, pretty well known, very reputable journalist in the industry, who basically volunteered some of the information, insider information that he knows regarding what's going on with the FF series right now. And I'll be real with you, it's kind of not fucking good at the moment. Essentially, they had multiple, like, FF16 spin-offs, it looks like, in the works, and they were all canceled, primarily due to the very poor performance of FF16, and then FF9 Remake, which, as we've discussed before, was developed by an external studio, it seems like when they got the build back from that external studio, the external studio did not do a particularly great job. I think it was called Zine or whatever the fuck. I think that's who it was. And when they brought the build back in-house, it was not a good build. And they wanted someone internally, I think he said, to like fix it up, and that didn't happen. And so they just delayed it. I'll have to go back through the thread to give you the exact details, but more or less FF9R is effectively canceled. How is any of this bad news? Okay, well, FF9 remake is canceled. That's bad news. FF16 spin-offs being canceled might be good news for me. But not necessarily objectively good news, right? Because like with a healthy franchise, you would want those spin-offs to come out and release. So again, not necessarily objectively good news, but personally, it's a W. For me, it's a W. But for like the objective health of the franchise, it's an L. Contextually bad news, yes. Where do you get your info is never even confirmed. Oh my fucking god. We go through this every time, bro. Every time. FF9R is not a rumor. It is not a rumor. It's a leak. It leaked from 2 legitimate databases. Furthermore, multiple reliable journalists have seen it. This is not mass hysteria. This is something that really did exist. There is no, oh, it did exist and then it got canceled conspiracy, but it never actually exists thing that's happening. Multiple people have seen this build. Like it's not mythical. And it has leaked again from 2 databases. How'd you find out it was canceled? Multiple journalists have received that information. Or a couple of journalists, I should say, have received that information or have publicized. Really, yeah, publicized that information is what I should say. It is not made up. We will go over this again before we start talking about FF9. But yeah, people are like, well, they never announced it, so it was never real as far as I'm concerned. Cool. But NVIDIA didn't put that in their database as a sick joke to start a 4chan rumor whenever they got hacked. Epic Games did not put that in their database so that it can be funny when Epic also got hacked, so that the game could leak twice and then it not be like, you see what I'm saying? Like like did the person who hacked Epic insert a bunch of real games that were coming out, like Kingdom Hearts 4 and Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster, and then he was like, yeah, I inserted like 100 real games, but I'm gonna insert this one fake video game just so that like Final Fantasy YouTubers can look stupid when they talk about it, and then it never happens. Do you see how, like, when you think about this for like longer than a second, it's not made up, I promise. But it is canceled, so yeah, it might as well have been made up. Canceled or on ice? Thank you for the super chat. Alex Donaldson in his post kind of clarifies the distinction here. So, which is to say that there isn't much one. Sometimes a project can be canceled and then still be revived. and he actually gives us a specific example of a game that was canceled for a long time and still actually released, despite the fact that it was canceled for quite some time. So when the FF9 character designer Toshiyuki Itahana left Square in January, chances of FF9 remake disappeared. I 1000% agree. That's kind of when I knew it was fucking over, to be honest. And also too, Itahana leaving kind of suggests to me that something happened and he dipped. Like he was like, yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like this isn't working. He probably felt demoralized by that. What game did he used as a canceled game being revived? Dissidia Duellum. He said that Dissidia Duellum spent a good chunk of its life canceled. Yeah, he was like, that game was canceled for so long until suddenly it wasn't canceled anymore. And then it released. So there is hope. But at the moment, FF9 Remake is canceled. They revived Duellum, Monkey's Paw. Brother, I like the game. But yeah, they revived Duellum. Everyone in chat is saying should have stayed canceled. Damn. Okay. Well, okay. So here's my hope, and we'll talk more about this when we get into it. But my hope is that the visible now, because this project has leaked, the visible disappointment of fans will create enough buzz for them to uncancel the project. That's the hope. Giant Monkey Butt, thank you for another super. Because the show has a release target of 2028, I could totally see them holding off until then because the show is a sequel to the game. Yeah, it is. And the animated series is still coming, which also the animated series was canceled too. That's another thing that people may have forgotten about, is that there is an FF9 sequel series in the works about the children of Vivi, which, yes, I know. And that was supposed to happen, and then it got canceled, and then it got revived, right? So it's not impossible for FF9 to happen, but the odds of it happening are low now. Just join FF9 remake confirmed canceled. It depends on how you define confirmed in this context, because we are not relying on official information, but we are relying on reliable information reporters, if that makes sense. Final Fantasy Versus 9 is coming. I think I'll wait for that one then, bro. Yeah, Dude McGuy's new video was absolutely incredible. We will have to, if he's okay with it, we'll have to react to it. Maybe not this stream because we have so much to talk about, but maybe on our Friday stream. But essentially, he made a video about how thematically FF7R and FF13, like the whole FNC saga, actually have a tremendous amount of overlap. And this is something I've been saying too since like 2020. But when I said it in 2020, it was bad. I think it's okay to say it now. I think it's okay now. Back then, though, it was not okay. Skeeth, thank you so much for this super chat. I feel like the pivot away from using the past series is maybe unrelated to FF7 Remake series, skewing so much older when Square maybe wants to prioritize bringing in younger audience members. Skeeth, thank you so much. I think so too, but I had imagined that the FF9 remake was something that they were trying to aim at that younger audience or packaged for that younger audience. And the biggest reason for that was the FF9 animated series, right? So I thought, like, oh, they're targeting 8 to 13-year olds with this new series. It seems like they're trying to make like FF9 like appeal to a younger demographic so that they can get into Final Fantasy and that can be like their jumping in point. But then they canceled it. So now I don't know what the fuck anymore because that's not happening. And if that's not happening, then I don't know. Okay, World Above, if you are so committed to believe that all of this is a fake psyop, please explain to chat how it ended up in two legitimate database hacks. Please explain. Please explain why someone hacked it, inserted dozens upon dozens of real unannounced games, and then when it came to FF9 specifically, they just made it the fuck up. I really want to understand what your take is on why that happened. Please explain this to the class so that we can all understand your take about this. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around anybody can type shit. Right, okay. Okay. So the hacker hacked in, leaked 99.9% real games twice. Two separate leaks, years apart. Two different hackers, by the way. And in both situations, they both thought it would be really funny to type Final Fantasy IX Remake, but also somehow know a bunch of other legitimate games that were going to come out and put all those in there. All right. So they got a bunch of legitimate leaks. And then they were like, I'm going to add one more that's fake. I'm going to add like one more that's fake. And it's going to be Final Fantasy IX Remake. Lol. Okay. Every time we discuss this, though, there's always someone that's like, that we have to go through this like every single time. It's crazy. I do encourage always with like rumor stuff. Like obviously with rumors, I'm like pay attention to the official information. Rumors are just a grain of salt. Don't believe any rumor until you see it. But this is not a rumor. They broke in and found it. Right? Like if they didn't break into the house and find it, then I would be like, yeah, the whole thing has just been like a rumor mill, a he said, she said thing, right? But they broke in and found it. And then when you factor in like the multiple different people who have had information on it and have seen it that are reputable people, it doesn't make sense for all this to just be fake. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started for today. The first bit of news is actually not Final Fantasy or Square Enix. But I still want to talk about it because, as you guys know, I fucking love this series. And I'm a massive ass fan. Okay? Shout out to my boy at Skyraider G7 for sharing this with us. It looks like we can expect remakes of Persona 1 and 2 duology happening eventually, maybe. Here is what Wada has had to say in a recent interview about Persona 4 Revival. Asked whether fans might eventually see remakes of the first 2 Persona games given the studio's recent trend, or whether the focus is shifting toward Persona 6, Wada didn't give a definitive answer, saying, quote, "At this point, I can't say for sure, but personally, I think it is something we should definitely do. I think we have to do it," he said. I'm a massive Persona fan. I love this series. Despite what I've been told my opinion should be, I actually really like Persona 3 Reload. And I am really looking forward to Persona 4 Revival. It's one of my most anticipated games of the year. I, however, have not played Persona 1 and 2 duology. Much like most of the Persona games before Sega kind of took over and started porting them to everything, P1 and P2 duology are not the most accessible of games. And the only way you can play them is if you want to hop through emulation hoops. Ski, thank you so much for the super chat. If P1 and P2 remakes happen with time, with the time management system added, it's fucking over. Don't gentrify my favorite games, dog. I think that if Persona 3 and 4 are anything to go by, I don't think that they're going to make those type of drastic gameplay changes to Persona 1 and 2 duology. I think that they're going to stay fairly faithful in those respects. That being said, I do think you should expect some Persona 5ification of Persona 1 and 2 duology. I do think that you're going to see a Persona 5-esque menu happen in P1 and P2. That's to be expected. I've heard really good things about these games. If I had to choose one to play my first time, which one would you choose? P5 is honestly the best starting point, I think. And then working your way backwards. Probably. 5 is just super accessible and really easy to play. Also, the opening hook of Persona 5 gets most people really, really good, and then they're curious to finish it out. Roy Mustang, thank you for the super chat. Why are JRPG devs so obsessed with appealing to nostalgia-addicted boomers? Square Enix's AAA division has become a remake/remaster factory, and now even Atlas is going the same way. It is not a JRPG dev thing. It is like an industry-wide thing. Everyone in the industry right now is making remakes. The reason that they're making remakes is because remakes are easy as hell wins. You know what a remake is going to perform like, generally speaking. You know what the audience is like, and it's a lot easier to do a lot of the outsourcing work. With remakes, you already have a winning formula established. And so, there is far less risk when creating a remake than there is creating a brand new original product. P1 and P2 aren't boomer only ones anyways. Yeah, I would say that the younger audience of Persona really wants P1 and P2 remakes. As I just mentioned, actually accessing Persona 1 and 2 in general is not easy. And there really isn't a definitive version for, I want to say both of them. Again, I haven't played yet. And the reason I haven't played is because there's no easy way to access it outside of emulating these games. So again, a P1 and P2 remake would be beneficial to me. I do agree that the entire industry, though, Roy, is nostalgia obsessed right now, for sure. There's no question about it. And this is just what capitalism dictates. This is also why I think a lot of the news about like, oh, Square sales are up. I'm like, yeah, that's like okay news, I think. It's not bad news, but it's not good news either. Because their sales aren't up on, new products, new initiatives being taken for the most part, right? Other than Adventures of Elliot, which is factored into some of the news that we're going to be talking about. But for the most part, Square Enix in the past couple of years has kind of become the remake remaster company, for sure. Idealistically, obviously, a lot of these remakes are good, beneficial, as we were just talking about. Final Fantasy Tactics Ivalice Chronicles, absolutely necessary for that game to come out, right? Because you can't access FFT, right, in the normal way before that game came out. So that was kind of a necessary thing to happen. And more people have played it as a result, too. Because it came with a bunch of new quality of life stuff, made it a lot more accessible, etc., etc. I want to see Square Enix's sales up after they're releasing a new Kingdom Hearts. Sales are up on FF17, Dragon Quest XII. The next Nier, dare I say. That's kind of like the thing for me. Going back to what I was saying, there will be some Persona 5ification of P1 and 2 remakes. But I think it'll mostly be in the menus and the sense of style and whatever new music they end up adding to these games, probably to bring them more in line with P3 through 4. And I do think that a lot of fans of P1 and P2 will absolutely not be happy about that. That is for sure. They will be very angry. I think when you just look at even P3 and a lot of people not being fans of the alleged Persona 5ification of P3, they're going to be pretty damn pissed with Persona 1 and 2. But I think you also have to understand that Atlas isn't really making these games 100% with the original audiences in mind. They're remaking these games with the audiences that Persona 5 brought in mind. Like this brand new 10 million plus audience that I think is going to continue to grow beyond that. Because I think that P5 is going to hit 12 or 14 million before P6 comes out. I think once P6 hype happens, people are going to buy P5 even more. And that audience is massive. And I think they're thinking about that audience more than they're thinking about the audience, let's just say, of maybe at most, I don't even think P1 or P2 duology even sold 1 million. So that less than 1 million audience is not going to be as important to them as that brand new P5 audience. And I'm not saying that that's correct or how they should handle it. I'm saying that's capitalism. And that's probably how things are going to go. And you should be prepared for that if you are one of those older fans. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, Persona 4 Revival will receive a better appraisal from the core Persona audience than Persona 3 Reload did. Even though I think Persona 3 Reload was just fine as a remake. I know that's a contrarian take, as it seems. But honestly, I think the biggest contrarian take you can have as a Persona fan is liking Persona games. Like, if you talk to Persona fans, I'm just like, when did you guys like any of this series? Because I'm just like, it seems like you hate the whole series. And it's not even as long as like Final Fantasy is to have a divide, right? Like, at least with Final Fantasy fans, it's clear. It's like, oh, I hate like everything that came after 10. 1 through 10 is the best. I don't like anything else. It's like cool, right? At least 10 games is like more than like the 6 that came after. And also too, there's a clear divide. Like, you can literally point to like, oh, this changed massively and now you don't like them anymore. Okay, that makes sense. It's not turn-based anymore. Different people have come in. Okay, right? But like with Atlas fans, I don't know at what point they liked this series or hated it. Or like what's going on. Because they just seem mad about like literally everything all the time. And I don't know. Ski, thank you for another Superman. I'm God's biggest contrarian, so I'll say this. I'm sort of tired of Persona at the moment because it's this Katamari ball of, well, people like that, which results in really disjointed vestigial design. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I can't really disagree. You know, this is kind of an issue with all of creativity right now. Everything is decided by what's algorithmic, right? And so if something isn't algorithmic, then it's not going to gain traction anymore. This is now, thanks to platforms like TikTok, even really impacted like the type of music that people are making, right? Because it's like, you think about the meta of what would be good on a TikTok. And so you kind of start making music around that. Hell, movies are designed around like film, like television specifically. I was hearing nowadays they make sure to continuously reiterate the plot because people are on their phones all the time, and so they miss parts of the story. So characters will kind of reiterate the plot. Unfortunately, the impact of social media is the dumbing down of all art in a weird way, because all art now has to be ran through the filter of what plays nice in the algorithm. So the more people can look at trend lines, unfortunately, the more, whether we consciously want to make decisions based on those trend lines or not, it happens that the more we do. I have ADHD and I have more of an attention span than most of my neurotypical friends. It's strange. Yeah, me too. And I've kind of like, especially the more I've cut out social media, like I've noticed that like when it comes to like executive tasks, I struggle more than them. But like when it actually comes to like listening to people and being engaged with like certain things or like being like attentive to my environment, I'm like more locked in than they are, and they're like more spaced out and more like looking at like Instagram and stuff. It's actually kind of crazy. Clax, thanks for the bits. Atlas fans are probably mad that just what was their own thing is more popular now, not gonna lie. I think low key, kind of, yeah. Low key, bros, yeah, I do think. I think that like, bro, if Trails ever went like super mainstream, and by super mainstream for Trails, I meant like they have like a 3 or 4 million seller, which I mean for a JRPG, a 3 or 4 million seller is pretty hot. If they ever had like a 3 or 4 million seller for Trails fans would hate the series all of a sudden. They'd be like, you know what? Don't fucking play Trails. That shit's ass, bro. They're like, Trails fell off. The Trails fell off, bro. I don't like that shit no more. Atlas was very niche until P5. Like, it was a very closed community, but then teenagers and mass got into Persona. So now Atlas bad. I saw it in real time. Yeah, I think a lot of people say, oh no, Persona 4 is like when it became mainstream. But even with Persona 4, I don't know if I would call it mainstream. Like, Persona 4 was like, I don't think it was like a massive seller, like from my understanding on like PS2. It sold like really well. Like, it was Atlas's best-selling game. But if you look at Atlas's games, they really didn't have any million sellers before that. Like, Persona wasn't even on my personal radar until 5. I'm looking at this. Hold on. I was trying to see what the sales were for Persona 4. The Japanese release ended up adding to 700,000 copies. Wait, so Persona 4 Golden sold 2.5 million copies worldwide for Vita and PC. Yeah. Yeah. So the initial release, I'm trying to struggle to find it. But yeah, it was like a million or two from what I'm seeing. Like maybe like 2 million. Something like that. Which again, for a JRPG is huge. But for like, when you compare that to P5, yeah. Remember when it wasn't on PC? Yeah. Everyone and their sister is playing P5? Right. So it was a steady build up, right? And then P5 is kind of like when it took off. It kind of depends on your definition of mainstream, I guess, right? Because I don't know how mainstream you consider that. I guess for a lot of people, once you hit like 1 million, that's when you hit mainstream. But I would say that like 1 million is like low tier mainstream. Does that make sense? Like, it went from like low tier mainstream to like middle higher mainstream. Mainstream is 4 to 5 million IMO. Yeah, I would say mainstream is 4 to 5 million. Like that's like my kind of barometer for like what mainstream is when you hit about 4 or 5 million. Like, you can talk about it at a party or something, and like people who are like not like super gamers but like in touch with gaming know what you're talking about. Stellar Blade is mainstream, bro. Stellar Blade sold 6 million units and was also Discourse Game of the Year. Stellar Blade is mainstream. I mentioned the Stellar Blade to people and they're like, oh, that game. They know. They know. Dude, you think about it, Stellar Blade sold more than FF16. Actually, at the moment, Stellar Blade's probably more mainstream than Final Fantasy is, like objectively. Or at least the latest entry, let's say. Because Final Fantasy is still baked in the cultural zeitgeist, regardless of whether the newest games are doing well. Tech bros love Stellar Blade. I guess I'm like tech bro adjacent because I was a computer science major in college. Stellar Blade is a better action game than FF16 too. Don't say that out loud, bro. Don't say that out loud. They'll crucify you, bro. I don't want to see nothing happen to you. Don't say it out loud. Okay. Yeah, they say that profits up due to games like Dissidia Duellum and Dragon Quest Smash and Grow. I just have a hard time believing that Dissidia Duellum has profits up. That's crazy to me. But if they say it, I believe it. Let's take a look at Cammy's thread here. Cammy, I want to thank you so much for putting all this together for us. This is a really accessible read, and we can go through it. Yeah, Cammy's saying here, some preliminary takeaways from Square's Q1 sales profits are obviously strong, but this stands out. HD, SEG, plus MMO unit sales up from 4 million to 7.38 million, 84% year on year. Only two new titles shipped during Q1: Rebirth on Switch 2 and Adventures of Elliot. Elliot is unlikely to be moving multi-million units in 3 weeks. Yeah, as a Team Asano game, they usually tend to sell in the 1 million to 2 million range. I'm not sure at the speed in which they sell. However, it's quite clear that Rebirth was probably a significant number of those units. Rebirth had, obviously, its Switch 2 release, but also, due to the Steam sale that happened after Revelation, it saw a massive uptick in players. So it seems like as they announce these new iterations, entries of the FF7 trilogy, more people come in, right? And so as Revelation is coming out, it becomes this big deal, this thing, the epic conclusion to the recreation of one of the greatest stories of all time. Now, whether you agree that it is or it isn't is a different discussion. But that's what it's positioned as. To some degree also, and this is where I may draw some contention with other people, I actually think the controversy helps sell the game, especially on a discount. Right? So if it takes $30, $35 or whatever it is for like remake and rebirth, and you hear from some people, dude, this is a remake of the greatest game of all time, and other people are like, it sucks, they ruined it. People who are fans of the OG would hate this shit. And other people are saying the opposite. They look at the Metacritic and they're like, well, the Metacritic looks good. Some people say they love this and it's the best thing ever. And some people say they hate it Well, the whole thing is like $35. I'll give it a shot. So I'm not really convinced that the controversy is actually going to make the games not sell. Some people are saying that the ending of Remake is why we saw a sales decline for Rebirth. I like Remake as a video game. I did not like Remake's ending. But other than anecdotal evidence, I have yet to see anything substantial that indicates to me that people did not buy Rebirth because of Remake. All the evidence is purely anecdotal. There is nothing tangible to suggest that, right? Maybe that is true. I'm not saying that it's not. Like, I cannot emphatically prove that it isn't. And I'm saying this as someone who thinks that Remake's ending is not good. I do not like the way the first game ends. And I don't like the way the second game ends, really. But I do like Remake and Rebirth quite a lot. I think that they are great games. I think some of the story decisions are not great. A lot of the story decisions are quite questionable, but I think they're pretty great games. And I am very much looking forward to Revelation. But I cannot point to a specific data point that says this emphatically proves that Remake's ending is why people didn't buy the next one. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence, and you could upload a YouTube video and get maybe like a couple, tens of thousands of views on it, and people will say, you're right, this is why I didn't buy it, right? Like, I didn't do it. But you could also do that with, say, Zelda. You could say, like, I didn't buy Tears of the Kingdom, or I didn't like Tears of the Kingdom because it continued down the Breath of the Wild formula, and I wanted a traditional Zelda back. And there could be, thousands of people agreeing. But then we know that Tears of the Kingdom sell well, right? Like, there's no way to, like, really prove one way or the other that that's what it did. I am not saying, and I want to be really clear about this, I am strictly not saying that it's not the truth either. Like, I'm not saying that, like, that you could not run some type of poll or, like, some type of data and actually draw a real conclusion that at scale, people stopped buying Re-Trilogy because they saw where the story was going with the first one, and that actually did impact sales enough to make them not buy the next one. Probably didn't help. That's a fair conclusion. Probably didn't help. I agree. But there hasn't been anything to actually tangibly, like, be able to say, like, yeah, that is exactly what happened. This is kind of one of those things anecdotally, like, or how should I say, we often kind of project how we feel about these things as, like, the core reason. And again, I say this as someone who looked at the Arbiters of Fate and the whole, like, this is the future if we fail here today. And I was like, oh, bro, what are we doing? And was like, it's not a good idea. It's not a good play. But I can't really say that that's not that had that impact because I don't know. I could project my feelings on it when I see that data and say it's because everyone felt the same way as me when they saw that. And therefore, everyone concluded that they weren't going to do it anymore. That's a good hypothesis. But like any hypothesis, you actually have to like test it. You actually have to get data. You actually have to make reasonable points that like allow us to conclude that it's a really good hypothesis. Maybe it is true. But until it's actually been tested through some sort of means, a really well-conducted survey that surveys a diverse group of people, because again, if you concentrate to one audience, then you won't get a very good, complete picture of the data. So if you purely were to survey like my audience, they'd probably come away maybe a little bit more like toward the middle or positive. Some of you love it, some of you hate it. We're mixed here, but it would greatly influence it, right? Versus if you collected, say, let's say like baby seals audience, it'd be extremely positive there. If you collected, say, Sebi's audience, it'd probably lean more toward, I fucking hate this, right? So it depends on whose audience that you're collecting from. So typically what you want to do with these things is that you don't want to collect from just one audience. You want to collect from multiple different communities, have it kind of be randomized if possible, so that you can make sure that the data isn't skewed in that way. But this is why I say it's actually really hard to conclude these things. Tangent aside, let's read the rest of Cammy's thread here. Blitz, what's up, man? Bruh, was in the middle of clicking post on a video. Power went out for the entire neighborhood and is down for approximately 5 hours. And it's a hot ass day. In me now? God damn, bro. Praying for you. Better go sit in the car, bro. Sit in the car. Kami then continues saying, this harkens back to Hamaguchi's remark that Rebirth is performing even better than most people imagine. Some still insist he's lying, but the numbers offer a rather different read. The reasonable inference is that much of the 3.4 million unit swing came from Rebirth's platform expansion. A PS5 exclusive from February 2024, reaching 3 additional platforms 2+ years later, nearly doubling the entire AAA subsegment's revenue while driving a approximately 6 times increase in profit under a month. That's a fairly compelling data point against the Rebirth flopped narrative. In 3 months, they've invested 4.1 billion yen, 26 million United States dollars, into development. Cash declined by 16.4 billion yen, largely reflecting the tax liabilities, dividends, a healthy deployment of liquidity. Their balance sheet has arguably never been stronger since divesting in IDOS. Reminder, Q1 already has delivered 34.7% of full year operating income guidance, 17 billion yen of 49 yen in quarter 1. Yet, fiscal year 2027 guidance remains unchanged, implying a 10.5% year-on-year decrease. That means Q2 and Q4 combined would need to decrease roughly 30% year-on-year to land on guidance, a sizable implied air pocket. Kiryu's approach here is deliberate. Square Enix is likely maintaining conservative guidance to preserve the upside and establish a pattern of consistent beats and an important credibility buffers as it contends with 3D IP activism. If this trend holds, Square Enix retains considerable strategic leverage. Very nice. Thank you so much for the very lovely thread, Cammy. Shout out to Elliot, by the way. We now have another banger franchise that is cheap to make. Yeah. Team Asano has just been absolute beast at that. Personally, Rebirth only flopped as a PS5 exclusive. Now that Revelation is on the way and Re-Trilogy is multi-platform on Japan's favorite console, Switch 2, things are shifting fast. Yeah. I think the biggest shift is actually happening on PC, though. Like, low-key. I think that you look at Capcom and you look at 60% of Capcom's sales being on PC. You look at how well Rebirth did during the PC sales. And it seems like, to me, I think their biggest L so far, specifically, has been not being on PC day one. I think that is so crucial, and they have skipped over it many, many times, and now they are not. And that's not to say that Switch 2 isn't performing well, or it's not like doing big numbers, especially, you know, probably really helping in Japan. But I actually think their biggest delta, especially for penetrating the West in the way that they want to, probably PC, probably Steam sales. This has been the biggest delta for Capcom, and I think long term it's going to end up being the biggest delta for Square. I can see 5 years from now, Square also has a similar distribution to Capcom, where their PC sales are maybe 50 or 60% of the money that they're making. I'm holding out hope for a Triangle Strategy sequel with how popular HD 2D has become, but I fear that Team Asano will be assigned to Dragon Quest and FF remakes forever. That's a possibility, you know, and I think that sucks and isn't a very good use of them. And I know you guys will be like, what do you mean? We want more FF and Dragon Quest remakes, whatever. But honestly speaking, I think Team Asano is kind of better off creating their own new IP. And I say this very much looking forward to Resonance. But if I had to put their focus on anything, it would be above all else, yeah, creating Octopath Traveler 3, Bravely Default 3, those sorts of games over, you know, Final Fantasy VI HD 2D, whatever, right? Because I think building new IP is probably the better thing for them. Night Sky, what Final Fantasy would you like to see remade next? Final Fantasy 15. It's the only one that needs it. It's the only one. It's the only one. I know some people are like, Final Fantasy VI HD 2D, but I'm like, why? What is that even going to do? It's going to be the same goddamn game, but the pixels will be like a little bit more 3D with lighting effects. And I'm not like insulting HD 2D, but I'm just like, Final Fantasy VI with just better 2D presentation is not gonna actually make a better FF6. Like, it'll be a marginally better FF6 with voice acting. Like, okay. The Pixel remasters are so good and do everything that we need on that front. Like, literally, what can the Pixel remasters actually do in a profound way to make the 2D Final Fantasies better than they currently are? Maybe FF 1 through 3. Sure. But 4 through 6, no. Like, there's nothing they can do. And 1 through 3 don't need another goddamn remake. Luke Bauer, thank you so much for the super, brother. Expedition 33 has sold 8 million copies in 1 year while staying on Game Pass, surpassing both FF16 and Rebirth. Square Enix was brutally humiliated. I think that, for all the talk about how it would be impossible if they made like a turn-based game to do those types of figures, for sure, it has not been tangible at the very least. It has not manifested in something that has benefited them thus far, for sure. Just give me DLC for FF2 and 4 and minimum to give them their extra scenarios and I'll shut up about them. Yeah. FF10, 10.2 could get another remaster or next gen with better graphics. I'm very touchy about that. On the one hand, I am desperate to have a version of Final Fantasy X that would look good enough for the modern gamer to be able to sit down and be like, oh, this is Final Fantasy X? This shit is amazing. We've improved the minigames. That would be awesome. However, I also know Square Enix. And I know they cannot fucking resist themselves. And if they make fundamental changes to the combat, to the sphere grid, to other aspects of Final Fantasy X, I will fucking hate it. I will reject it to the absolute maximum. I love FF7 Re-Trilogy combat. I think FF17 should have Re-Trilogy combat. But if Re-Trilogy combat even touches Final Fantasy X, it simply will be war. I will hate the living shit out of the game. 10's combat is already a masterpiece. Does not need to be touched. Now, maybe some of the in-game content could be reworked. That's for certain. But I don't want them fixing what's broken. And I'm going to be honest, Square can be a fix something that's not broken company. Oftentimes. So the idea of Final Fantasy X that has modern, retouched visuals sounds good. But I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not going to say, oh, I want Final Fantasy X Remake. And the reason I'm not going to say I want Final Fantasy X Remake is because I'll be real with you. If they even added so much as a controllable camera, I don't think I would enjoy FF10 Remake. Like, I think I would actually not like it. I know that sounds crazy to some of you because you've been brain rotted by modernity slop. I do not want a controllable camera in Final Fantasy X Remake. The camera should be fixed. The fixed camera of Final Fantasy X Remake is necessary to the vibe of the environments and the visual storytelling of Final Fantasy X. If you were to make a 3D camera that can move around in the way that modernity slop games do have, you've completely ruined Final Fantasy X. You completely ruined it. You disagree? Okay, I'm gonna show you why. I'm gonna literally fucking show you why. This is like, we're gonna get to the main part with FF9 in a bit, but I've been set off now. Okay. I will show you why this is not, like, why you can't do this. Everyone in gaming who has played Final Fantasy X knows this shot. There is not a single person who has played FF10 that does not look at this shot and think, damn, I remember exactly what I felt when I saw this. You cannot get this from a camera that you can move around, a camera that you can control. And as you go up this hill, as you go up, the camera controls and glides out through the waterfall. It's amazing. It's magical. What controllable cameras do, and I'm not necessarily hating on them, I'm mostly joking, but when you have a controllable camera, you cannot get this feeling of a director, like a film director, purposefully showing you shots, purposefully doing cinematography. It disappears, right? And so what this game had was actual cinematography by someone doing camera work, which is an art in itself. So when you say, oh yeah, they should make it modernity, it should have a controllable camera, you're saying that we should remove an artistic aspect of this original work that was so profoundly influential. Okay, Zelda, thank you so much for this super chat. I would prefer an FF8 remake. That game desperately needs a remake. The plot was rushed and underbaked. There was clearly story ideas they had to cut, like character development and screen time. I think FF8 would benefit most from a remake of the Golden Era Final Fantasy. Like, so much. Like, if I had to pick one, I would say that 8 would benefit from a remake more than 7, TBH. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, God of War 2018's camera is also, like, a really interesting camera, too, right? Because if you had God of War 2018's camera, but it was pulled back in the way that the original Greek trilogy was, that it'd be a completely fucking different game. It would be a completely different game. It would ruin the Norse games. It's great in the Greek games, but it would ruin what the Norse games are. What if they added a real explorable world map in Final Fantasy X? I think the world map has needed to come back the moment after Final Fantasy X released. I think it worked well for Final Fantasy X, and I think it has been something that has not really worked well since the absence of it. That is my position. However, FF10 does not need a world map. It is the only game, the only Final Fantasy game that does not have a world map, and it's okay. This game has a good fucking reason to not have a world map. and it benefits, I would dare say, from not having a world map. If FF10 had a world map, it would add absolutely fucking nothing to Final Fantasy X. It would not be a better game. I know FF fans are convinced that it would be, but if you actually sit and think about a world map in Final Fantasy X, it adds literally zero. And that is because FF10 was designed without the need for a world map. And it worked because it is a seamless, interconnected world. Not seamless, it's done through zones. But it is an interconnected world through zones where you go through a pilgrimage. Because this game specifically is a pilgrimage, having a world map would not make sense because it is meant to be a pilgrimage on foot, a religious pilgrimage on foot. A world map is actually kind of an antithesis to giving the feeling of making this religious pilgrimage on foot. It's not good for that. 10 has deep thematic reasons as for why a world map would not be good for it and would not add much to it. It is also one of the only ones that I think has that good thematic reason that is baked into its narrative and gameplay for why it would not need a world map and why it would not benefit from. So do I think everything after 10 probably should have had a world map? Yeah, I think it probably would have been better. Like 16 would have been so much better with a world map. I mean, you'd have to fix other stuff about it too, but adding a world map would have been nice compared to like just picking a level select. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that. I mean, I guess you get that at the end of 10, but it feels more like you unlock that at the end of 10 versus just like the whole game revolves around level select. M2, thank you for this super chat. Now would be the perfect time to remake FF5 with the class system from Revelation, and there's only 5 characters to make costumes for. So you mean remake 5? Like as a re-trilogy style FF game? That'd be cool. But I don't think it'll happen because Yoshi P has already said that like all the multi-part, well not multi-part, but like honestly the action part of 7R is a contributing factor to why it can't be done in one game, because the amount of animation work and the complexity of enemies alone would necessitate not being able to fit everything into this. And every time I say this, people who don't understand game development look at me like I'm fucking crazy when I start talking about enemy animation complexity and like scripting and QA for like an action game and like how much more time it takes. And I'm just like, damn, people really don't think about this shit at all. People really don't believe this. Yeah, so like one of the easy reasons I talk about like that 7R had to be multi-game in order for it to be the style of game that it was, is that like in The Witcher 3, I think you have like, is it 100 enemies or 100? It's like, I think The Witcher 3 has like 100 enemy types, right? Which is like a standard bestiary for an action RPG. Or not like a standard, but a decent sized bestiary for an action RPG, right? 100 enemies. Do you guys know how many enemies FF7 OG has? 300 enemies. Right? So you have 300 enemies that all need animation work, textures, QA, scripting. And one of the reasons that's easy to do in turn-based is because the motherfuckers just stand there and do an attack. And it's typically not like it doesn't have to be tested in the same way that it does in an action game. In fact, if you go and look at the animation work in a turn-based game versus the animation in an action game, it's not as elaborate. So in an action game, there is maybe 1 or 2 animations where the character runs up, hits an enemy, and then like jumps back to their position, right? But in an action game, you have to do multiple what's called blend animations to accommodate for the different states that a character can be in whenever they're doing those actions, right? So there is Clive's basic combo string, right? Which is like 4 different animations, right? So already you have 4 times more work. But then you have Clive's jump combo, right? So he has a combo that he can do when he's jumping, right? Okay. And so that's like another 4-hit combo. So, oh damn. Now we have 8 times the work for a basic attack, just hitting the square button. Then we do in a turn-based game where you hit the attack button and they run over there, and every single time, for the most part, they do the basic attack where they swing the sword. And this is part of why making a game action versus making a game turn-based has Besape been playing this whole time. I did not mean to make it play. Oh my gosh. Well, anyways. I guess it's not a big deal. Hopefully they don't. I'll remove it in post, whatever. Because I think Besape sometimes gets you a claim. But anyways. If you... What the fuck was I saying? Oh, yeah. Like, the animation work alone is tremendously more. Gamers... And I understand that gamers aren't taught to think about these things in these ways because most gamers have never tried to make a game. So they don't actually think about like, oh, increasing animation complexity and the number of animations that we have to accommodate for tremendously increases costs. And so this is why action games, for the most part, it's like the easiest example. It's not the only example. That action games, for the most part, cost way more money. A lot of times they exaggerate animations in turn-based games as well to make them visually more interesting, while any entities are standing there waiting for their turn. Making exaggerated animations can often be easier than making subtle animations, yeah. Camera work also helps too. But ultimately, action games are a lot harder to make and a lot more expensive to make and take more time, and a lot of times need really good expertise, right, to make. It's kind of insane that Yuna is probably the most fleshed out character in terms of animations in turn-based FF because she has all these summons with different summoning animations. Yeah. Do you want to know what FF7 Cloud's like animation is in like just to do magic in OG FF7? He like spins his sword up, puts it on his back, and then like he shoves his arms out like this, and then he goes like this. and then like, or I think that's like his summon animation, but that's basically what he does, and that's his animation for every fucking summon and every magic that he does. He has the same animation. It's the same animation. Not a different one. It's the same one every time. Let me see if I can find that. We're gonna move on to the main thing in this stream. Let me see if I could God. I just want to find combat so I can make this point before we move on. Yeah. It's the same animation for everything. Whether you're using bolt or fire or like whatever fucking animation, whatever magic animation, whatever magic is happening in the game, that is Cloud's animation every single time. You can be using Faraga, you can use Meteor, Comet, whatever the fuck. You can use any of that. That is always his animation. Right? But in an action game, every single magic has its own unique animation. Now, obviously, in modern turn-based games, this is a little bit different. Each one tends to have like their own unique animations as well. But in a turn-based games, a lot of these animations can be quickly or more easily reused, etc. It just depends on how much you want to invest in, spicing that up. But it's not necessary. Another thing, too, is that combat feel isn't as dictated by the quality of the animations. Is Clair Obscur like that? I want to say when you use like a lot of buffs in Clair Obscur, they do tend to use like a singular animation, but I'd have to go back and check. But I just use turn-based Final Fantasy as an example, because it's the easiest. And I know off the top of my head that it's like that. Again, not every turn-based game is like that, but it's an example of like what I mean. And this is why, one of the reasons why turn-based is not as expensive or time-consuming to make. There is another thing too, and this is kind of like what I mentioned. So if you go and you see Cloud attack, oh, he's using Bolt again, but like he's probably gonna use Bolt this whole fight. I don't need to show you guys. You guys fucking know what it looks like. You know what it looks like when this blonde motherfucker runs over here and he hits the guard scorpion, right? Even for the most part in modern turn-based games, where they might mix it up if you do like a crit animation or something like that, but he runs over and he attacks, and that's the animation. There is no he's aerial state, or he's about to land and then it's about to go into a ground combo or something like that. There are no blend animations, like, dozens of blend animations that you have to do for things like that. This is, again, a lot of the stuff that gamers do not consider with this debate on action versus turn-based or game development in general. About why this is much easier to produce and faster to produce versus something like action. And this is also why I have said before, even though I really like re-trilogy combat, and I do hope. Sorry, I've been losing my voice today. And I do hope that they continue to have re-trilogy combat. I do think it probably makes sense for them to go back to turn-based, purely because they could make a more cost-effective game and nobody would be mad at them for it. In fact, most people would cheer them on. Most people would be like, oh, you're so back. But really, they would just be making a way cheaper game. And it just would not be a big deal to most people. I think it's worth it for them if they keep re-trilogy's combat, but I think if they're just going to make another action game, then I don't see a fucking point. I don't see a point, to be honest. I think that if they're just gonna make another action game in the vein of the way 15 or 16 were made, then I don't think it's gonna play well. To be not play well as in like play well, like the way the game actually plays, but it like how it's going to play ultimately, in terms of market sales, popularity. And that's not to say obviously that, you know, action games aren't popular, clearly, but I just think that it's not worth it for them specifically. Do you think modern FF games would get away with less animations and turn-based combat? In the case of FF, it's reasonable to demand unique well, I mean, yeah, I mean, all these characters have unique animations, right? But I mean, if you looked at say, and I'll just use this one kind of arbitrarily, but if you looked at, say, Clair Obscur, which actually does have quite a lot of animation work for a turn-based game, it still does not have as much animation in it relative to an action game of similar scope. And that's kind of my point. They can either make a double A action game or bank on a triple A turn-based game with abstractions that they used to be masters of. Both are financially viable for the sales they draw. Right. So it just depends on what they want to do. What I think would not be wise would be to like probably do another style of combat like 15 or 16. Where it is primarily focused on being an action game. And that's not to say that 7R games are cheap by any means, but it is just to say that I think, at least with 7R, they have something that most fans seem to quite enjoy because it's turn-based adjacent enough for people to like. It's close enough while not still being the thing. It gives you a lot of the things that the turn-based FFs used to give you while being a fairly fun action game too. It's still command-centric. You still control all your party members. I think FF fans value that stuff more, generally speaking, than they do turn-based. It just so happens that turn-based is the best system, usually, for having all of those abstractions in place, right? For having it so that you control all party members, and there's a big list of different magic abilities you can use in order to be strategic about fights and things like that. And it's also no surprise that 7R's combat is the most beloved by fans, and less than coincidentally has all of those things. Okay, so we're going to talk about FF9 being canceled. But first, I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. If you haven't read over this, you can do like a little bit of pre-reading while I'm in the boys' room. And yeah, you can do that. and then we're going to talk about it. So 1 second. Okay. The reason that you joined today's stream, probably. Who is this guy, first of all? This guy is Alex Donaldson, very well-known, very reputable journalist, okay? And he has taken to Reset Era to share some details with us about where things are going with the Final Fantasy series currently. This is not just a random guy running his mouth. He's very well connected, very knowledgeable. So this is what he's had to say. He's had to share some insider information with us. And I gotta be honest, guys, this is not what I personally would call great. Like, I'm sorry, I keep moving the window now. Yeah, this is not what I personally call great. This is some fairly depressing news about the state of things, right? So let's go ahead and give this a read. Yoshida has a strategy he deploys for managing fan expectations where he speculatively says things he knows to be true. For instance, during FF16's promotion, he casually speculated about the possibility of more games and stories in that universe. At the time he did this, some was on the slate. So just this first part tells you, oh no. But things change, obviously. But what is he doing? What he is doing here is simply outlining that such things are not likely to happen and giving a broad reason for why, though the reason isn't entirely true anyway, as it's all a question of scope and scale. So originally, it seems that FF16 was supposed to have some type of spin-offs, which is why Yoshi P had teased, hey, FF16 has, room for more stories to be told. And then none of those stories were told. It seems like they were canceled. If I had to hazard a guess, probably had to do with the fact that the sales of the game weren't particularly the greatest. Also, bear in mind that something that we also found out from Alex was that FF16 was supposed to have a handshake agreement with Sony Pictures to have a live action film take place in Final Fantasy XVI's universe. According to Alex, that never manifested because FF16 did not sell well enough. This was in another post that he made maybe a year back. Continuing onward, he says, in example, there was a Final Fantasy IX remake, and it was a single game, and it was very far along. Yoshida even made some vague comments like these, hinting at the fact around the last expansions, hinting at the fact that the last expansion's FF9 tribute content. So it is possible with the right scope, which, to be clear, is obviously a smaller scope than 7R. However, for various reasons, surely a story for another day. I wish it was a story for today, but that project stalled out, and it's no longer moving forward. And Yoshida makes comments like this to manage fan expectations. Of course, the thing is, the path can always change again. The new mobile Dissidia game spent the better part of a year effectively canceled before being revived, for instance. So nothing is concrete, and in the case of 9, that work is still waiting to be revisited. Though I did feel the game was truly dead when the illustrations created as a potential box art and as key art were tweeted out for the anniversary. Which is really not good, right? So basically, when we saw those new artworks, we were basically looking at box arts for what this game was supposed to be. We were looking at promotional artworks that were basically being treated as anniversary artworks. And with this in mind, all the merch that we saw for FF9, dude, that was literally stuff that was meant to promote FF9 Remake. And they just released it anyway because it was all in the pipeline. So why not just make the money? This is really depressing. I'm sorry, guys. Anyways, it's the same with Yoshida's teasing comments about Hamaguchi on FF17. As we've been saying, Hamaguchi's going to be the guy for 17. There's no way he would say that and it not be. And there's a good reason for this, by the way. But let's continue. Anyways, it's the same it's the same with Yoshida teasing comments about Hamaguchi on FF17. He doesn't say that unless he knows that's the current plan. It's how he rolls. But also, the thing about these teases is the plan until it isn't the plan. Things can change. And Square Enix has, in the last decade, had a very transient dev setup where stuff changes often. Their new structure appears to finally be giving stability, though. Here is something that a commenter on my video said when I talked about this. Shout out to them. I forget who said it. But they made a very important point about why FF17 was confirmed to be Yoshida's in that point. When Naoki Yoshida basically said, hey, you'd make a great Final Fantasy 17, and chat is saying it. The reason is because, especially in Japanese culture, if there was a team already working on Final Fantasy 17 and he made an offhand comment, hey, Naoki Hamaguchi, you should direct Final Fantasy 17, that would be incredibly disrespectful to the team that was actually working on FF17 if it was someone else. And there's no way he would do that. And especially not under a Japanese cultural lens. No one would do that in a Western cultural lens and it not be disrespectful. It's disrespectful to us, right? Like if I know that you're the one working on it and I say, hey, everyone's saying that guy would be good. That's like mega disrespectful, dude. So it's quite clear in that moment that it was kind of confirmed that Hamaguchi is doing 17. Okay, Zelda, thank you so much for the super chat. Do you think they're holding off on FF9 Remake to prioritize resources and devs for FF17? I think it is as Alex says at the end of this post, and that is that they are not trying to mine nostalgia right now. They're going to focus on new stories. Because they're kind of getting diminishing returns on mining FF nostalgia. Continuing with what Alex has to say, what this is all really about is that SC has made the decision that after they close out the 7R trilogy, they need to focus on new stories and less mining the past, which has done okay for them, but ultimately offered diminishing returns. If you want to grow the franchise, remakes probably aren't it. Incidentally, I do think to some degree, these comments are slightly unhelpful, if refreshingly honest. Because what it is stating is that they believe it is effectively impossible for them to tell the sort of stories that made FF so famous and beloved in a single modern game, which is sort of damning, really, but honest, like I say. Not gonna lie, if that last paragraph is genuinely what they believe, then SC doesn't just need a recent corporate overhaul. Doesn't just need its recent corporate overhaul. It needs a creative overhaul as well. I think if we're looking at it from their point of view, where everything has to be created on a 1-to-1 scale, in the utmost realistic proportions and scale imaginable, then yes, they are correct. There's no way to do it in one game. The problem is that they are so deeply held on to that idea of creating everything to realistic scale when it's not necessary. Yes, the premise itself is flawed, right? They're correct if they're under the assumption that it's necessary to do that. But it's not necessary to do that. And in fact, many people actively don't want that. So I don't know why they're obsessed with that perspective, because it's not right. It's not grounded in reality or the expectations of their fans or what they need to be able to do to grow. I really do think like the most damning part of this whole thing is this right here, is that they think they cannot tell the stories that made FF famous in a single game anymore because of the upscaling of fidelity. And I just don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's necessary. I don't think that this level of scale is needed. I think I understand why they wanted to do it for FF7, because FF7 was popular. And it would have made perfect sense, assuming that the series would maintain its popularity, that doing that for FF7 would lead to the optimal, most profitable result. And that's not to say, anything definitively on 7R sales, but it is clear that that model has not succeeded well enough to justify them doing it again. So that much can be said, right? It's the same death spiral if FF needs the most realistic graphics mindset is the crux of that. Here's the thing, too, that's crazy about that. FF could have the most realistic graphics ever and still not have everything be at 1-to-1 scale, and still not have, not necessitate everything being a multi-game saga. Like, you actually don't need to do all that. It's not necessary. You can have perfectly realistic graphics. The problem is they throw away all abstraction alongside those realistic graphics in the pursuit of this idea that with the realistic graphics, everything about the presentation has to be realistic. And it doesn't. You can do a world map. It's fine, bros. I'm getting close to the end of the rebirth analysis, and it's clear to me the devs still needed to pull back on the scope to make the world. The world map doesn't match the gameplay, and it's something that tarnished their development pipeline by the time they realized it wouldn't work. By the time they realized they wouldn't end in Gingaga. I think they know by now that realistic scale is not achievable for globetrotting adventures. Right. E33 is literally realistic graphics with abstractions. Yeah. So is Lost Odyssey. And also so is Final Fantasy X. Right? Like, I think now people would look at Final Fantasy X and say, oh, that's not realistic. But the artistic intent of Final Fantasy X was to be as realistic as possible on the PlayStation 2 hardware, right? So, to play devil's advocate, I think the problem is the industry itself pushes for this. Also, investors would probably not be interested in funding a game pitch that's, let's make a game that has the story of an old FF and the story scale beyond what we were able to do with FF 15 and 16, but with the ethos of PS2 FF, purely because the people with money think anything older as a step backwards. Okay, well, yes, but I do think that some of the recent investors have actually been asking for turn-based at some of the shareholder meetings. So I'm sure that at macro, you're like 100% right. But I am starting to see some of the investors in this company start to swing the other way. I can't really speak for how many of them it is, though, that are actually swinging that way. So you're probably right at scale. But I do think that it's kind of going the other way a little bit. A little bit, maybe. We know at least one of them wants FF15 remaster. I know. Night Sky Venture Capitalists. I think that they should make a 30-hour game. And I think that most of the side content should come at the end of that 30-hour game. And I think it should have a world map. And I think it should probably have turn-based combat. I love 7R system. I'm still open to that. But I think it should probably have turn-based combat. Prodigy, what's up, man? It's probably because the E33 4 remakes are doing well. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait. Why did I read that as one statement? I don't know why. It's two different things. Yeah. E33 might have had an impact on investors wanting them to do turn-based to get... Actually, I want to say one of the investors mentioned E33 Prodigy in their thing. Yeah, Atlas expects, or I should say Sega expects, Persona 4 Remake to sell 5 million units in its lifetime, which is pretty substantial, right? That's like very big. I'm more okay with side quest spread throughout the game, more in the style of Resonance is going for. 44 evenly spread quests throughout the game just feels right. I want it to be like old FF, bro. Like, I want it to be like, it's like 30 hours and you do all of the side content, like 90% of it at the end as post game content. So basically, no traditional side quests. I think they should just straight up get rid of traditional side quests. I'm speaking personally here. I think most video games should straight up get rid of like marker based side quests. I actually think that like marker based side quests are mostly terrible. And I say this, and people will say, "Oh yeah, what about The Witcher 3?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, the game that came out 11 years ago." And the one that we're still using to say, look, side quests can be good. We have like every now and then we have one game with really good side quests. And then people are like, yo, look at this one game that has really good side quests. It's possible. And then it's like, okay, that one game and these 400 fucking other games that also came out this year that do not have good side quests. And it's just like, bro, like, why do we keep pretending that side quests in most video games are good? I don't understand why that is like why we have to keep collectively delusioning that side quests in most video games are good when they're not. Side quests are really distracting from the main story. For example, Rebirth and FF16. I guarantee if you skip all side content for FF7 Rebirth and 16, you will have a tremendously better narrative experience. I almost promise it. It will be better. Side diversions in the older Final Fantasy games were kind of integrated into the gameplay flow and continuing the main story ultimately. Whereas this other shit like is just not great. Boomer gamer mentality, I know. But it's like the one thing that like, not the one thing, but it's one of the things that I think that like boomer game design like for sure was correct about. Like, I think side quests are great when you are CD Projekt Red, when you are like, you know, a studio that can make really good side quests. And there aren't a ton of side quests, but a small number of hand-selected, crafted side narratives. Here's the thing, right? If we were to start describing side quests as side narratives, our mentality around them would change completely. And the expectations around them would change completely. I think that we should actually start calling side quests, like, well, the current side quests that we fucking get should be called side slop. But I think side quests should be looked at as side narratives. Things that are not within the narrative scope of the main game, but further explore the world and the lore. Some of you will fucking say, have the fucking nerve to say, that that's what side quests already are. No, they're not. You're going to point to the handful of good games that have good side quests, and then that's it. You're going to point to the exceptions of side quests and not the reality. The overwhelming fucking reality of side quests is green marker, go to the fucking quest destination, do the fucking thing that you honestly do not give a shit about, but you get a reward at the end, Skinner box ass shit, and then be like, oh yeah, side quests are worth it. Because maybe within that great pile of incredibly uninteresting side quests, there were 4 or 5 in there that were actually decent and added something to the story. And you're like, bro, the side quests are worth it. This is how I felt with like FF16. I think FF16 has maybe like 4 or 5 really solid quests in there that actually really expanded the world for me and gave good, solid expansion to the game. Yeah, and the rest of it was all busy work. The rest of it all was kind of boring, not that interesting. Also, too, it's really apparent in that game that they did not have much budget for most of the side quests. And so they're just there to be additional content. There are some good quests in FF16, but the overwhelming majority of them are not. But this is not just FF16 that I'm picking on. This is most games with side quests. This is just the absolute state of RPGs, to be honest. We gotta stop pretending side quests are good. I'm sorry. Gilgamesh and Queen's Blood are a great example of side narratives. Yeah, I would actually agree. And my I guess my point would be like, you should do Gilgamesh and Queen's Blood and not like map marker stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like generic green quests. So you should have Queen's Blood and Gilgamesh, right? You see what I'm saying? Like scope wise, have like 4 things that are side narratives like Queen's Blood in there, right? And then that's it. And every single one of those, deeply fun, deeply interesting, crafted content that is rewarding and fulfilling by the end. That cannot be said for most RPGs and most side quests. Most are boring as fuck and do not add jack shit to the game overall. Roy Mustang, thank you for this super chat. If RPGs become a linear game, where all you do is go from one main story event to another, like Uncharted, that would be the end of RPGs for me. Thank you for the super chat, Roy. I don't think that that's what they have to be necessarily. But like I said, most of what I'm suggesting is just how RPGs were before like PlayStation 3 ish. Like I'm not suggesting something that's like brand new, let's just say. I'm literally just suggesting like, hey, it's kind of better when games didn't try to pack all this side content in them because it was a necessary thing to do. Giant Monkey Butt, thank you for the super chat. Knights of the Round needs to be like Gilgamesh. Yeah, you know how like every single, like maybe not every single, but most of the side content in OG FF7 is like super notable. Like it's like, oh, that side quest, or like, oh, that thing. Right? Like it's a fairly big thing that it happens. And that's the intentionality that I'm talking about. There's plenty of side quests or side diversions, however you want to describe the OG, right? Side narratives. Optional content maybe is a better umbrella term here. Plenty of optional content in FF7 OG that you can do. Overwhelming majority of it, very memorable rewards, right? But it wasn't like lost cats that every RPG has for some reason. It was literally like, oh, you can unlock a fucking playable character. Yeah, FF6 as well, right? It's like, oh shit. There are whole characters you can fucking miss. Obviously, that's a lot harder to do in a modern AAA game. And I'm not saying that they would. The macro point that I'm making with this overall is that ultimately it was all rewarding, memorable, intentionally constructed. It wasn't a bunch of like smaller quests that like boost experience or anything like that. They were all meaningful and intentional and ultimately added to the identity of the game, whereas that cannot be said about most modernity side quest slop. How did we get on this? We're supposed to be talking about the Alex Donaldson thread. Anyways, this is not particularly great. FF16 spin-offs being axed, I feel like not too surprising. Game didn't go as planned. Obviously, the difference with FF16, they didn't have they didn't have a trilogy like 7R does that they had to release stuff for because they had already promised it, and so I imagine those were a lot easier to cut. As he also mentions here, it is always possible for Final Fantasy IX Remake to be revived internally. They still have the build. It's probably not up to their liking, which is why I think they haven't released it yet. I think when it is up to their liking, if they ever get it up to their liking, then they will release it. There's a reason that this, as it was described, almost finished video game was not released. And if I had to hazard a guess, I would say it's because they don't think it would be a banger. They don't think it's up to their quality standards. That's the only reason why. I don't think that, just the explanation alone of, well, they don't want to mine nostalgia. I think that's part of it. I think that's half of it. Or rather, I think that's the reason that they don't want to spend the extra money fixing how fucked up they feel the current build of this game is. And that's fair. Hey, I get it. At the same time, I cannot help but agree with Alex here in his assessment that ultimately mining nostalgia is not going to put FF back on the map in the way they're hoping. There is not going to be a remake that is going to make FF suddenly explode. If remaking Final Fantasy VII did not do what they were hoping for, then remaking anything else is also not going to do that. That being said, I think they should remake Versus 13. User FY7RI8GU8L, thank you for the super chat. The problem is they turned into the Ubisoft checklist to max interaction. Beware of what you measure. They are fine as you find on your own. World building, B plot. Yeah, but I mean that's also the problem with like the Ubisoft checklist too, is that it makes you realize very quickly how much of like I guess like checklisty and Skinner mocks that the side quest based game design ends up feeling for most side quest games. And I actually do think that Rebirth has some really rewarding side content in it, and some really fun side content in it. Sorry, I can't speak. Yeah, Rebirth actually does have like a lot of fun side content in it. But at the same time, it's also got a lot of, yeah, I don't fucking want to do this anymore. Rebirth just needed to cut some stuff. But they felt like they couldn't because they needed to fill out the world. Thinking about it, you know who may have been handling the FF9 remake, and I can see them not liking the quality? Zine, the developers behind Trials of Mana and Romancing Saga 2 remakes. That was the rumor, Crossy, is that Zine was the one handling it. And they did not like the build, apparently, and then they took it back in-house. That's what I've been gathering from this, is that that was kind of the course of events. So yeah, Zine was the one behind it. That was according to the rumors. So that part is speculation, but you mean they did a Cyber Connect 2 again? I'm almost 90% certain that is exactly what happened. From having followed all this, the rumors, the leaks, everything that's come out, yeah, I think that's like almost exactly what happened. I did one yesterday in Cosmo Canyon, and I have forgotten about where I had to run my dumbass around the desert holding a monster tracker until finally finding the boss to fight after what felt like 20 minutes of looking at a red versus green meter. But it'll stay in memory for you now, huh? Also, imagine someone spent like a month on that damn chicken mini game, and Hamaguchi just doesn't have the heart to tell that guy his mini game will be cut. Yeah. I would actually leave the chicken mini game, because believe it or not, that's like the opposite of like the type of content I was talking about. Because I think the chicken mini game actually does say something and is interesting and funny, right? You do the chicken mini game because, in part, because it's fucking funny and interesting. But like a lot of the runaround, like go do this, go kill this, is just not really that fun. A lot of Chatley Intel stuff is also kind of like not as fun. I'm jumping in late, so we ain't getting FF9 remake. It would seem no. It would seem that we are not. Good? Damn, Dale. Waste of resources, make new stuff. I actually agree, right? Because my take, honestly, chat, if I'm being real here, I do kind of feel like, why remake Final Fantasy IX and not make a brand new turn-based Final Fantasy that is made for people who like FF9 so that they could just go play that? You know what I'm saying? Like, why remake 9 when you could have made something new and fresh that would have resonated with that audience? I'm not against remaking 9 per se, or any other FF, but I just think at this point, it is not going to be a remake that changes things around for where we're headed. It's possible we'll still get it, for sure. But right now, it's not set in stone. In before FF9 Remake was going to be a testing round for turn-based demand. At the very least, Resonance is taking that role now. Considering that FF9 Remake was going to be a single game, I'm almost positive that it was going to be turn-based. I think the idea of outsourcing FF9 was a good idea and better resource-wise. It was, because you don't want your internal team working on remakes. Not your A team making remakes. And right now, the problem has been that Final Fantasy's A team has spent a decade or more really behind the scenes remaking 7. And I think while FF7 needed to be remade, obviously, and of course they tried to remake FF7 externally with CyberConnect 2 and that failed. But the problem with that is that that's the team that should have been making brand new Final Fantasy games, that should have been working on, I mean, they probably are working on 17 now, but should have been working on, 18 as well in this time, or 19, or whatever the fuck, right? And that has been probably the biggest cost of remaking 7 internally. And so people will say, how in the world did they trust CyberConnect 2 of all developers to remake Final Fantasy 9? And the answer to me is quite simple. The answer is, did I say 9? I mean 7. They trusted CyberConnect 2 to remake FF7 because they needed them to. Because they needed that team on other projects. Right? Could you imagine where we would have been if CyberConnect 2 was successful in remaking 7 and Creative Studio 1 was free to do other things? We would have had the entire 7 re-trilogy and we would have had 17 and maybe hell even 18 by now. From what I gathered, they thought CC2 was capable of doing it up to their standards because Nomina personally requested them. Right. And then he kind of then he was kind of like, their shit is whack. And he even said as much about like one of the trailers too, where he was just like, yo, these motherfuckers don't know what the hell they're doing. I had to go over there and like kind of tell them like, this is how it's going to be. So. Do you think they're going to change naming conventions for FF like with Resonance? I don't know. FF has so many spin-offs that I don't even know if they can do it. It may actually be a bad idea for them to do the Resident Evil thing. Because while Resident Evil has like a lot of spin-offs, yes, like Final Fantasy has way more. Way more. And now they have an existing audience that's trained to ignore things that aren't numbered. So that may hurt more than help. I don't really have a conclusive answer on that. And I feel like Square also doesn't really have a conclusive answer on it either. Or maybe they do, because they considered it with 16 and they still decided to pull the trigger and call it 16. Because if there was any game that you could like remove the number from and try to pitch it as a different thing, like as a standalone thing for FF, it would have been 16 for sure, because it was so different and unique compared to the rest of the series. And yeah, you could have done that. I do wonder if some of Remake's development jank is a potential reason why Nomina transitioned away from director to creative director. I think it's just Kingdom Hearts 4, to be honest. I think he just wanted to set up 7R under his creative vision, under his control, particularly with the first part. And then I think he just wanted to, well, they needed him to go work on other shit. So they let Hamaguchi fulfill his vision. If FF9 had the cultural relevance of 7, would we have had a remake by now? Yeah, I think so. Well, if anything had the cultural relevance of 7, we'd be there. FF10 also, I think, is right behind 7 in terms of cultural relevance. I think that you can, if there is a Final Fantasy that people recognize, if it's not 7, then the next runner-up would be 8 or 10, right? Because you could show Squall or Tidus and Yuna and those characters. Do you think that 16 was a more cohesive experience at launch than 15 was? Yeah, 100%. That being said, I would say the current FF15, while way more jank in the combat department, I do think is actually more fun to play. Like if you boot up Royal Edition with all DLCs, I do find 15 to be the more fun game between the two, having recently replayed FF15. 16 is a complete game. Yeah, well, it's the difference for me is, do you want a complete game or do you want an incomplete game that's kind of fun and got some weird, interesting ideas? And so, yeah, 16 is objectively complete and 15 is not, but I still have more fun with especially the current FF15 than I do with 16, because I just think 16 is just really fun to mess around in. Haven't played Royal Edition. I gave up on 15 after they canceled the DLC thing. A lot of people haven't tried it, but yeah, they definitely should, because it's actually pretty fucking fun. It's not great and it's not complete still, and I don't know if I would call it good, but it is kind of enjoyable. A soulless like? That's fucking funny. But anyways, I do wonder, because as mentioned here, they had more games and more stories in the FF16 universe, and then that didn't end up happening. So I am kind of thinking now, like, I do wonder what they had planned that was canceled. Obviously, again, we know that one of those things was a live action handshake deal that they had with Sony Pictures to tell some type of story within FF16's world. Who knows what that could have been? But as far as like what kind of like canceled side stories that they would have had for FF16, I'm just like, that's crazy. But also it's interesting to think that FF16 almost got its own compilation. The compilation of FF16 is like, that's crazy. That feels like fever dream shit for me. Trying to universe FF15 and compilation of FF7, something like that, FF16. I'm so glad that never happened, to be honest. Yeah. It would have been cool A young Sid adventure, um, either Benedicta. Like, I do think actually exploring young Sid and Benedicta would have been great, but I think it would have pissed me off even more about how that ends in the main 16, because I think that ends so badly in the main game. I hate the way Benedicta is treated and the way they kill her off in the main game. Um, so I agree. That's like the most fascinating thing to me that isn't like really answered in 16, other than Clive's experience as a slave for 13 years. Um, and I think that that is probably the thing I would have wanted them to explore. FF16 Crisis Core. But yeah, it didn't end up happening. So and Benedicta in their short time were one of the highlights of 16's cast for me. Yeah, it was for me too. And then that's the thing about it for me is that I feel like there is such a clear thing that they could have done with Benedicta instead of just killing her in that way. I think that having Benedicta come around after Sid's death and really having her atone, she could still die, by the way, but having her around after that to atone for herself after Sid's death and complete that character arc, and even have the cheesy ass moment when they're in the white light and she takes Sid's hand and they go off to Final Fantasy Heaven together or whatever the fuck. Could have happened, right? And then it would have felt like they really utilized the character to her fullest. Having Benedicta around after Sid died also would have been a great way to still further explore Sid's character after he died through those flashback sequences, and have given more context for Clive's journey. Yeah, none of that happened. None of that fucking happened. So they just like did not utilize her to any extent. It's so crazy. I knew the story was not gonna be for me when that happened. I think we talked about this last stream too. But I was like, I don't think this is gonna go in a good direction when I saw that. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of, and I understand like why Joshua coming back was the thing, right? Because he is the Phoenix. But part of me was kind of like, it was more interesting when Clive just had to carry that weight. Like, that was the cost of me turning into a, almost said primal, into an icon. And doing all of that. Yeah, I mean, it was fairly obvious from the beginning. It's like, oh yeah, he's the Phoenix and he's gonna come back. And okay, like, yeah, so you kind of know that, obviously. But then when it happens, it's also kind of like, yeah, but like, if Clive just had to carry that weight, I guess for me at least, that would have like, that would have really hit harder then. Because when you're accepting the truth, you're not actually accepting the full truth, right? Like if you think about that scene, you're kind of only accepting the truth-ish. Yes, you did turn into a freak. You are a freak. And you did kill some people, but you didn't kill your brother. That's actually not true. So you're accepting like 3/4 of a truth. You're not accepting the whole truth. Um, Or rather, I guess you are. Well, you're accepting the truth and like a lie on top of it because he's not dead. Um, I wonder if 16 would sell well on Switch 2. I don't know. Because we don't have a baseline for Switch 2 sales or a baseline for like what 16 has sold beyond 3 million or a baseline for anything Rebirth has sold. We don't even know. We just know it's not like we know it's not like great, but then maybe it is great and it's better than we expected, but also we can't say the numbers. This shit's so frustrating, bro. Could 16 even run on a Switch 2? Be honest. It struggles on PS5. Could it run on a PC even is a better question. Because the PC version is also like not the most well optimized per se. I'm in a weird place of liking 13, disliking 15 and 16, then liking 7R Trilogy. I actually don't think that's weird at all, if you really think about it. I think you just like Creative Studio 1. Right? Pretty clear through line, I think. You like Creative Studio 1's games, and then when it's not Creative Studio 1's games, it doesn't do it for you. I think that's fair. I can totally understand where you're coming from with that. Do you think the way Elden Ring handles their side quests is the best way to handle side quests? Yeah, well, I think that like when you have an open world game and the point of the game is not narrative urgency and an explicitly told story, cinematic story, then I think that like Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild work really well with their types of side content. And The Witcher, where half of the point of the game is these side narratives that are always entertaining and very well done. Yeah, I think it's great. But the vast majority of AAA games is like, go do this, and then you walk over there and then you fight a mob, and then the mob is dead, and then you go turn in the quest. Like the vast majority is go find this item, and then they mark it on the map, and then you walk over there, and then you find the item, and then you walk back, and then you turn the item in, and they're like, oh, thank God, I have enough mushrooms to make soup now. And then you get 300 experience points and like a high potion. And the game makes you do this 300 fucking times. And that is the reality. Gact post is Genesis cosplay? Yo, what the fuck? Yo, what the fuck? Did that happen? Where is that at? I don't see it on his Twitter. Unless it was like Instagram or something. Careful of the DMCA for a song. Oh yeah, he reposted his Genesis cosplay around from around Crisis Core Union time. Oh, okay. So this isn't something that recent that happened. Okay. I thought he like just did this. I was about to freak out. Could you imagine though, if he just shadow dropped a fucking Genesis cosplay, and that was like, wait, it was 4 days ago? Okay, can someone just put the link in Twitch chat so we can look at this? Wait, it's on his Instagram? Okay. Okay, hold up. It should be muted so we don't get a strike or anything. Okay. He says, leaders don't follow the vision, they bring it to life. Oh man, that's really interesting. Him conveniently posting this right after Hamaguchi said that Dirge is also important and all the compilation stuff could happen, and him being asked about Genesis returning in FF7 Revelation. I think it's entirely possible, dude, that this is a tease. I do think that we are going to see Gact return as Genesis in FF7 Revelation. I think it's coming, bros. I think it's absolutely coming. I hope you guys are ready for it. Everyone who hates his character is going to be sorely disappointed. Will he sing the main song of Revelation? I think that would actually be cool. People don't remember it, but he was in the recording studio last year, summer. Oh my God, he was. You're so right. He was recording last year. Oh my God, dude. Bro, it's so over. Gagged Genesis is returning. Genesis is absolutely going to be in Revelation. If you guys had asked me, like, if you asked me in 2020, would I want to see Genesis in Final Fantasy VII Revelation? I would have said no. Hell no. Now, yes, I do want to see Genesis. It's abundantly clear to me that whatever I had in my head about a remake of Final Fantasy VII when this first started out is not happening. Right? Like, they are not remaking Final Fantasy VII in that way. That ship has fucking sailed. The ending of Rebirth very much outlines that it is not going to be that type of remake. Hell, the ending of Remake outlines that it is not going to be that type of remake. Fine. However, it can still be the type of remake that is whatever the hell FF7R currently is, which is this giant celebration of anything ever labeled FF7. And with that in mind, and with how crazy things have already gotten, Zack is back, whether you want to call him alive in the literal sense or not. With all those things in mind, why not throw every fucking FF7 thing in there? And also, if, I'm not saying it is, but if this does actually turn out to be a sequel, we know how Dirge of Cerberus ends. And there is a cliffhanger with Genesis. And with this including everything from the compilation, I think it only makes sense for all of that to happen with Genesis and Vice in Revelation. Giant Monkey Bot, thank you so much for the super. Can't wait for him to whisper Loveless in my ears. Me too, brother. Infinite in mystery is the gift of the goddess. We seek it thus and take to the skies, brother. Yeah, but it's to the point where, oh, what the fuck? Okay. Tell us more about game design. I'm sure you wrote a play. You leave critical points in a pamphlet. You pass an intermission, pass out at intermission. Yeah. Wait, oh wait, that's for someone else. Okay. I think you're having an argument there. My bad. I'm trying to catch up with chat. You're saying there'll be a sequel to Revelation? No, I'm saying that Revelation would be the sequel or re-trilogy, perhaps. But I'm not saying that with certainty by any means. I'm just saying that because I know it's contentious, and honestly, I really don't give a fuck either way. I'm not like deep invested in like the idea of like this is a remake or this is a sequel, one way or the other. In the way that I think many other people within the community are. I just look at this as, well, you know, it is whatever it is. And whatever it is that thing. It is the seven remaking. And Jill is not coming back, and Jill is dead, and his cells all degraded. Yeah, they didn't even bring him back in like one of the dog timelines, which is crazy because they could have brought him back in the Yorkshire Terrier timeline um, or the Chihuahua timeline, but they did not. But the Shiba Inu timeline is uh, still out there. Is still a possibility. So maybe the Chihuahua timeline. Yeah, and it's not like a regular Chihuahua either. It's like one of those cracked out Chihuahuas. When Steve Irwin go out. That's funny. But yeah, I do think Genesis is coming back 100%. I think bro is on his way back easily. Hoping more for flashbacks if anything. I think you'll get those. Ever Crisis literally had an event where Angeal is fighting alongside Aerith and Zack against Sephiroth. So low key, he's probably coming back. That event was a huge hint. I think that they are going to conclude Zack's new story arc in Final Fantasy VII Revelation. It does not take a genius to figure this out. But, and it's a big but what is the best way to do that? What is the best way to conclude Zachary Fair's story arc? I think there's only one way to do that. And I think it's that you bring in everyone who is deeply related to Zachary's character development. Which means we do have to bring back Stella Nox-Foray from Final Fantasy Versus 13. No, it means that Angeal and Genesis, but especially Genesis, well, hell, especially Angeal too, honestly, both of them would probably come back. And both of them would fit into the story somehow. And that would bring some type of resolution, I think, for Zack's story. I don't know that. I am not an FF7 theory crafter by any means. I just think from a storytelling perspective and from a this is what they currently have set up perspective, that's what seems to make the most sense. I'm not saying that from a this is what they should do perspective, no. But I wouldn't rule it out either. Do you think fighting Sephiroth a third time diminishes his character slightly? It's one thing I hate about the remakes. I think fighting Sephiroth three times is a horrendous mistake in terms of narrative impact. Yeah. Granted, I don't even think most fans of Re-Trilogy I mean, not to say that I'm not a fan, but I think most of like even the diehard fans, I think, agree on that. That maybe fighting him 3 times consecutively was like not the best play ever. Like in terms of, I mean, it like, dude, like 3 fights with the same fucking guy. What makes the third fight actually final? What makes the third fight have any actual weight? You know, it's just like I've already fought this guy fucking twice. Like, and then the third time it's supposed to be like for real this time. I don't know. Giant Monkey Butt, thank you so much for the super. Angeal and Genesis guest party members for Zach. Actually, that would be cool. I'd really like that. Thanks so much for the super, Giant Monkey Butt. I think I'm thinking the same lines that you are. Along the same lines. Remake should have ended with Rufus as the final boss. I mean, that's kind of the problem with doing this multi-part is that the only game that would have had like a logical final boss would be Rebirth, and that boss would be Genova, right? You do the Genova fight after Aerith dies, but like but outside of that, like I don't know if there was like a good fight for remake 1 to end on. There is, but it's clear they didn't want to go in that direction for some reason. The final boss of remake part 1 should have been Rosh. He should have been the final boss. And all the stuff that happened with him in Genova cells, for some reason, they put that shit in Rebirth. And it was just like, he's just being a dickhead again. And then you defeat him. Wasn't that the idea that Toriyama wanted to do, if I recall correctly? Really? I swear there was an Ultimania tidbit where Rosh would have helped you escape in an older build of the game. What the fuck? Do I have like an like a true FF7 lore master? Never mind. I'm not even going to ask that question. Because all you motherfuckers will say, yes, me. And then be fucking wrong the whole time. Yeah, I need like my Shinra archaeology boys or like Schrodinger's baby seal or someone to be able to fact check that. But Rosh should have been the final boss. He should have had that encounter with Cloud. That encounter with Cloud should have gone horribly wrong for him. And then he should have been like, fuck it. Inject me with Genova cells. And then after that, you would have had the final showdown with him. And he would have had the Genova cells. He would have been a small taste of Sephiroth's power, right? And at the end, you would be able to further allude to Sephiroth and have the mystery of Sephiroth, right? Because you'd be like, is this how strong people in Soldier really are? And Cloud would be like, yeah, actually, that was one of the weaker ones. His power is nothing compared to Sephiroth. And then from there, you would be able to keep the mystery of Sephiroth while also teasing what Sephiroth could be. And you would have had a great final boss for the end of the game, and you would not need the motherfucking Arbiters of Fate. You would have brand new story that's in line with the original FF7. That's also really intriguing and really interesting. That doesn't really deviate from the overall or the overarching story of the game. Would have been incredible. They had the setup. It was all there. Rosh injects himself with Genova cells in Rebirth. So all of this kind of happens, but it happens in like the most hand wave, like, yeah, we didn't know what the fuck to do with him. So we just kind of like said, we're just gonna put him as like a filler boss fight in Rebirth. Really disappointing. Really disappointing. They could have made Raj so compelling, and they just didn't. And I don't understand why. So many ways you could have done that with Rosh, but they did it with Sephiroth instead. Sephiroth in the original game is often compared to Jaws for that tension building and looming background threat. The remakes have treated him like the shark in Jaws 3 and 4, as a parody of itself that forgets what made the original feel so threatening. Yeah. He's just there, bros. He's just there, and you keep beating his ass. And I'm supposed to think this guy is so terrifying, right? But like, how is he terrifying? I literally keep beating his ass. Like, multiple times I beat his ass. Like, I beat his ass more often than not. You know? Another way they could have done it if they really wanted to have the final boss be Sephiroth in Remake Part 1, I think would be if they lost that fight. And it felt really apparent that they lost it. Like, Sephiroth completely fucking destroyed them. And if they wanted to use the Arbiters of Fate, what they could have done, and they had to make Barrett fake die for whatever reason, which was also a terrible decision. What they could have done is that they could have had Barrett get stabbed in the final fight, and then the Arbiters revived him, and everything went horribly fucking wrong whenever Sephiroth showed up. They would only have to like move the Barrett fake out death up one chapter, and like, they would realize we do not stand a fucking chance against Sephiroth. He is so powerful. And that would have also been a lot more interesting to do than they kind of just show up. Like, Sephiroth shows up, they fight him, and then he kind of just fucks off. And then it's like, okay, I guess we need to pursue him. He's still out there. And then he shows up in Rebirth again. And then we beat his ass again. And then I guess he runs off. Anyway, there's any number of things that they could have done, right? Like, also notice here how I'm not saying that they had to stick to the original, because I don't even think that that's necessary for their ideas to come to life. I think that there were multiple different paths for them to actualize what they wanted to create. But I think that they chose a lot of things that did not communicate well enough what they wanted to communicate, or at least what I perceive they wanted to communicate, because I don't know what they want to communicate until I play Revelation. So I want to clarify that. But yeah, and until after it's out, I won't know. But I think that there are other avenues that they could have done to do a lot of these things. You're a purist? I know. I do think Raj could have been reworked in a way that kept him in Rebirth, though. I feel like ganking him in Remake would have dissolved his potential even faster? It depends, I think, because I think you could have gave him a complete arc within that one game. But I think you could have also brought him back too in other ways. So, like he survived and then Hojo did something. I don't know. That does border on being maybe a little fan fictiony, but you know. But the point here is though, there is a lot of different things that they could have done and could have explored there. I think even keeping in with their ideas that would have been uh really interesting and um added to Final Fantasy VII's lore a lot if they did explore, right? Um but they did not. That's my vision for it, not theirs. So Hojo should fuse Rosh into a motorcycle and make him a Hell House man motorcycle monstrosity. That's FF7 core as fuck. Great idea, King. Personally, my biggest issue with remake is how remake has handled Sephiroth is how self-indulgent it is. In a lot of the cloud scenes in OG, it isn't clear what is happening for a good chunk of the game before the reveal. But remake starts dropping black feathers and chasing Sephiroth through burning alleys. Like it's cool, but more like junk food than actual substance, if you get me. Part of that is expanding it across 3 games, but also too, I think that I guess you could say that. Well, yeah, all of it really is just the effect of expanding it all across 3 games, and that's what you have to do to build the mystery early. But I'm actually gonna hot take, and I actually think that chapter 2 is cool as fuck in FF7R. I actually like chapter 2. Not necessarily the part where he shows up and is like, by the way, you can't fucking save her, and then just like Chad walks off and like disappears. Although that is kind of fucking funny in hindsight. Um, but specifically, what I like about it is that I do like the scene where he shows up and he's like basically ASMR telling Cloud about how he killed his mother. I actually do think that scene is cinema. What I love about that scene though is that they don't show Sephiroth's face, and that keeps the mystery. I've talked about this long ago, but I think they should have not shown Sephiroth's face in all of Remake Part 1. But I think he should have been there, and you should have heard his narration, and the camera should be fixed on like his lip line down. You should see like his boots, like shots of like his chest, but you should never see his face. If you saw his face in the whole game, it should only be at the very end, chapter 18, you see the face of Sephiroth, and then that's it. And but I would have had him looming over the plot the whole time. Thoughts on definitive Final Fantasy X references in Part 3? Rico, thank you so much for this super. Um, I think they're already kind of referencing dress spheres. So I think 10 keeps winning, bro. I would love to see more 10 references happen if possible. 10 always wins, as they say. Plot twist, Rosh agreed to it willingly. I mean, he's the type that would. I hope he's a boss in Revelation. Oh, yeah. Um, We suffer from Michael Polanyi's called "We Know More Than We Can Tell." When authors do things do things instinctually, they're great. When the same artist reverse engineers their story, they fail. I think many such cases. Yeah, many such cases. It's why remakes can always be so um, hit or miss in a lot of ways for people. Because any type of remake that makes substantial changes, um, it's tough to remake anything because even if it's the same people remaking something, it's not the same people remaking it. You know what I mean? It's impossible for the same person to remake something. What I mean by that is that even if it's the same guy, he's not the same person that he was when he made something 20 years ago. He's a different person, especially if it's been a decade or two. God, am I a different person than I was a decade ago or 15 years ago? And if I had created some big life changing work back then, the me now and what I would create and my sensibilities and my understanding would not be the same me that made it back then. It would be a completely different me. That isn't to say that maybe the me now isn't better. I would certainly say it is. But it's not the same me. And so even if you get the same person, their creative vision has grown and may not even be compatible with the thing that they themselves originally created anymore. That was like a whole person ago, you know? And this is always the issue that you run into with remakes because you can never really get, even if it is the same person, to create something in quite the same way. They're going to be a different person. I think this is actually what makes Evangelion so good. Right? This is what makes the Evangelion rebuild so good, you know? And I haven't read every Hideki Anno interview ever, but just thinking about it like this, I think he realized exactly what I'm talking about here. That he's not the same man that he was when he created the series. He's a different man, and he's a different person now. So, rather than force himself to remake a work that represented a version of him that he no longer is, he remade the series to represent who he is now. And that is like one of the most powerful things I've ever seen any artist do with a remake, right? And it's why the rebuilds are so famous. It's why they're so well known and so well respected. Part of me also respects Final Fantasy VII Retrilogy for this same reason, you know? It's because while the developers are paying respect to Final Fantasy VII's story, they're also in their own way saying, yeah, but we're not those exact creatives anymore. You may not like that, but that's the truth. And we have to reflect who we are as people now rather than who we were as people. I think that is maybe a better way to approach remakes than trying to make art happen again. Art is very much rooted in time. Art and time are inseparable. You create something because you are in a particular era. You are going through particular things in your life. There are particular influences that are happening, and all of those are linked to the time period, both in your life and in this world. And it cannot be separated whatsoever. A product of its time is a saying for a reason, yes. But the truth of the matter is that everything that has ever existed or will exist is in fact a product of its time. I don't see how rewriting the story has to be part of a remake. You have the script. Just devote your time to polishing up combat, add some optional extra dungeons, update visuals. I think you're missing the discussion that we're having. I think that no one is saying that you can't do that, and that in fact that does not exist. And yeah, bro ain't listening at all. Yeah, I think so. No one's saying that that's not a thing already, and that you can't do that, and um, all those things aren't possible, etc. What we're saying is that when you are telling an artist to spend 5 years of their life remaking something that say they did 20 years ago, and they are an actual creative, chances are they don't want to do the same fucking thing again. I think that, like, how we think of a remake in the traditional sense, where it is, you know, a upgraded version of the game as if it were made today, better graphics, better gameplay, new content. I think that's great as a capitalist product that is made for the purpose of accessibility and growth of a series, and something that lets you relive that game again, etc., etc. Right? Like that's great. Like, I don't knock it. In fact, I mean, look at this shit. Persona 3 Reload, right there on my screen. Which people would say is a mid-ash Cheeks remake. I don't agree, but like, what I'm saying is, though, in cases like Evangelion or FF7R even, I understand a true artist, because artists are always seeking to challenge themselves and to grow and to create new things. If someone's asking you to make something again from 20 years ago and spend 5 years of your life doing it, the temptation to not do it, but also for that art to reflect who you are as a person, comes through. As I really think on this stuff, I've kind of come to the point of realizing a lot of gamers don't want art, they want products. That is very sad to realize. I'm not saying that about you specifically, but generally speaking, I've come to realize that gamers want products. They don't want art. Right? For all the criticisms I just made about 7R and the story, I can't say it's not art. What they're trying to do there. It is. Because literally, what the fuck? They could have just remade FF7 and it would have performed okay. But they didn't. Would have done just fine. And I have come to realize with a strong sense of conviction that I am more interested in bad art than good products. I don't care about products. They're good. I like a good product sometimes. You know, sometimes it scratches the itch. But what I crave is art. And when you look at things from the perspective of art, you kind of just don't care about boring, trivial, like, we're gonna upgrade the graphics and make it like a little bit more like the controls are better, like whatever the fuck. This is also why I'm a little bit of a hater on Ocarina of Time remake. Dell, thank you. Dell, I need to have you on here. We were just talking earlier on the stream, I think, before you came about like how I was saying through animation work alone, without factoring anything else, how much work they've made the modern FF games by switching the action away from turn based purely because of just things like animations, but also too listening to Alex Donaldson here say that they feel that it's impossible to tell the stories that made FF so famous in a single beloved modern game or in a single modern game. And part of that just has to do with them throwing away abstraction in favor of action combat and having like a realistic, fully fleshed out world rather than something like a world map, etc. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, Crossy, no one is saying that like there is no art to preserving uh, an experience like Trails. I think that's like the wrong way to look at it. And also, I'm not saying that like traditional remakes aren't isn't an art form within itself. I'm saying that there is a reductive product based way of looking at remakes and looking at uh just re-releasing the thing. Let me remind you again, okay? Motherfucking clearly, okay? However you took that about Trails for some reason, um I don't I don't know. I literally I literally do not understand how you took that that way. Um anyways. Yep, it's astonishing amount of extra content, millions and millions of dollars worth of work. Yeah. That's that is like kind of the problem I think uh that they're encountering here is that they're trying to make what they think the industry demands, and then most of their fan base, their core audience, doesn't care, right? But then on top of that, we recently got evidence, strong evidence, that it seems that as long as a turn based game has a strong narrative and really great music and all the other things that used to make Final Fantasy a smash hit can still be done. And I think that actually calls into question whether doing all of this is actually worth it. And thus far, I don't think we have seen that personally. Did I finish Trails Remake? I did not. I kind of put it on the back burner, but I do want to finish it before it comes out. Trails was the easiest example of a literal one-to-one remake. Yeah, I mean, also so is, which I have on my fucking starting soon screen. So clearly, I don't hate it, and I don't think one-to-one remakes are bad. Right, right. But the whole point is that we're talking about it. You see, what you're saying here is that My actual point is the distinction of real art and product is irrelevant, entirely pretentious from a consumer point of view. Right. That's my issue. We're talking about ourselves as consumers, and not people experiencing art, right? If we were talking about music and we were talking about like, because music, no one says it like this. No one says like, no one talks about the consumer. We don't say, the consumer, because we'd be like, oh, like what the fuck? Maybe they do in music discussions. I don't know. But we don't really think about it like that, right? Because we think about music and we think about art. The problem with games in general is that we think about games as products, and we think about ourselves as consumers of products. And I'm not saying that these games are products and these games are art. What I'm saying is that as long as we think about games as products, we hold ourselves back from being able to make more profound art. Does that make sense? So this isn't to say, oh, Trails remake isn't remake, it's a product. Persona 3 Reload, it's not like art, it's a product. No, it's to say that we're looking at ourselves as consumers of a thing that is purchased, and that we're guaranteed, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to think about art that way. You go to an art gallery, you're not a consumer of art galleries. Does that make sense? Am I resonating with you? I don't personally think that that's a very pretentious POV. Songs don't have budgets. I mean, it costs money to use a recording studio, but you know what I mean, right? Yeah. Yeah, we don't think about music, and we don't think about like as like the consumer of music, right? You're a consumer of like Spotify, but you're not a consumer of like you're someone who enjoys music. It's a connection that you have. It's profound, it's understood, it's emotional, right? When you play a song, you don't think of yourself as a consumer. You think of yourself as someone who enjoys art, right? Like, film is kind of the same way. You don't think of yourself as a consumer of film, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is I want gamers to break away from the mindset that they are consumers of products, and more that they are experiencing art. And I want games to be made from the perspective of they are being made as pieces of art and not just consumer products. I hope that clears that up. I get what your underlying argument is. It's just that I think it falls apart given the state of gaming, which, since the inception, unlike other artistic mediums, has been a purely capitalistic endeavor. No, that's fair. That's fair, Crossy. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of just like another thing that capitalism has kind of got its got its claws in and made it into that kind of thing, right? Then how is the audience not enjoying the art? We want the art we love to be brought into it. Oh my I'm gonna just hold this here for a minute. I'm literally, you do not get to see my face anymore for the stream. You just get to see me loving Persona 3 Reload. I'm sorry, chat. This is what it's come to. Sorry, as you can see here, I don't enjoy art. I'm a slop eater that does not enjoy art and I just we'll move on to a different conversation. Anyways, you guys know I love you. I hope it doesn't come across otherwise. Um, there's 2,000 indie games a year. There's plenty of art on Steam alone. That's so true. Yeah, it's actually insane now that, since Steam, creating video games has been so democratized that we can even have 20,000 video games release in a year. It's utterly insane. I think it's a good thing though. But yeah, most indie games that exist, you will never fucking know about. And that's just on Steam. Like issue with Rio is that it's not a definitive remake they promise. It's a retroactive remake of Fez with some extras. Yeah, that's fair. And I think some people can make fair arguments that it downgraded in some areas too. But my point there is not to say that like traditional one-to-one remakes are bad. In fact, I think I was literally saying that like I want a version of Final Fantasy X that literally preserved Final Fantasy X and literally only made the visuals look like they do in the CGI cutscenes, and for them to basically make adjustments to the mini games and then change literally nothing fucking else about the game. In fact, we were just like literally that's why I still have this screen up, by the way. Is because I was just actually talking about how I don't want them to change literally anything about it. Like you can't even have like a 3D camera because it literally ruins the entire experience of the environments. And I was like, and if you change this to have like a camera that you can control, the entire vibe of Besaid would be different and it wouldn't be good. You'd have to redesign it and it would suck. I don't trust them with FF10. Me neither. So anyways, that is not what I mean. You want a remaster disguised as a remake. Okay. No. Everything that isn't Resident Evil and FF7R is not a remake. You guys got to get that out of your head. That is also not how that works. You can have a one-to-one remake, and that's a remake. Like this idea that like a faithful remake is a remaster is made the fuck up. We gotta stop doing this. We gotta stop doing this. Like this has to stop. I mean, if you want to consider Crisis Core a remake or a remaster, either way, I'd kind of accept it. I think like the more traditional line blurring name is like Remakester, which more accurately describes what Crisis Core Reunion is, more so than remake or remaster, because parts of Crisis Core Reunion are remade, and then parts of Crisis Core Reunion are remastered. So all the cutscene and animation data, as well as, well, not all the animation data, because some of the animation data is brand new actually for combat stuff, but the cutscene animation data is from the PSP version. The actual game's code is still running on the PSP version's code, ported into the new engine. So, Remakester is actually a new kind of term, but it's really more accurate to describe games like Crisis Core Reunion as Remakester than it is to describe them otherwise. But also, remake and remaster are kind of flawed terms that don't apply to video games in the first place. We're using film and music terminology to apply to a medium that is more complicated in its construction than film and music are alone. Nico, thank you for the tier 1, brother. What's up? How you doing? Yeah, Metal Gear Solid Delta really is, if you really get into it, is really more of a remakester than a um than an actual remake, because it is still 110% running on PS2 code, which is why I believe it's capped at 60 frames per second, because um, they would have had to update a lot of the PS2 logic. Otherwise, the game would break, which would have took a lot more work. And I low key hate the name Remakester. I do too. I think it sucks. But like again, remake and remaster is film terminology, right? And we're using something. Also, it's like used in like music too, but like it's not something that applies to games, right? We don't have like masters that we can just you know uh remaster, I guess. Games are far more complex than film. It's the most complex parts of tech and art, and has to be fully interactive at sorcery. Right. Games are like unprecedented. Like it's the most insane thing to ever have happened in human history. We found a way to combine basically all of the art forms we ever made almost into like one thing. Every major discipline somehow. Even fucking sculpting. It's like it's crazy that we managed to like put all that in together. People argue with me for days on Twitter once because I said the 3DS remake of Ocarina of Time is a game literally designed up from the ground up by Grezzo. New code, etc., was in fact not a remake, not a remaster. Yeah, I mean like that's technically true. Like they actually remade everything in the game. Like they actually remade all of it, right? But see, here is the thing. People are like, I think actually people would have accepted that it was a remake if it had like more different graphics. If that weirdly makes sense. Like if the graphics are more advanced, I think people would be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. It's a remake." I don't know if they have to look different, but I think they have to. I think that looking different is a consequence of being remade, right? Because when you do remake it, you almost certainly will make it look different. According to people, I mean, oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I think that like people expect, but also too, there's no like really firm definitions of this stuff, and so people kind of insert whatever the fuck, and they're like, this is what I think it should be. Remake and remaster is a fairly nebulous term in this medium. No one can fully agree on what either term actually means. And in reality, it's functioning more of a sliding scale between aspects of both, which further muddles things. Yeah, that's actually a better way of describing it. It's really more of a like a spectrum of remake and remaster. And so yeah, is Crisis Core considered a remake? We came to the conclusion earlier that we would consider it a remakester, which would put it at the center of between remake and remaster. Near Replicant, the remakester of it, would also be a remakester because it actually still runs on the same code as the original Nier. Same events, same scripting. Main difference is that they've reworked the combat and they've redone the character models and the environment and a lot of the tech stuff. So do you call that a remake or do you call that a remaster? It is a remakester. That's like the best term, honestly. Generally, though, I would consider most things to be a remakester if they don't fully redo all of the game itself. Isn't Kingdom Hearts HD also actually a remake? They lost the original code. I would also call Kingdom Hearts HD a remakester. Because they didn't lose everything. They lost like several parts of it, and they had to restore a lot of it. It's like it's a partial remake. Yeah, so it's technically a remakester. The reason I kind of like to look at things from this way is because it actually defines more genuinely like what's going on when they're making the thing, right? It explains the process of making the work a bit more than the vibes based terms of remake and remaster do, which are like I think they didn't change enough, so it's a remaster. Like what the fuck? Not how it works, or not how, or shouldn't be how it works. So for me, there's remake, remakester, and remaster. Is Type 0 HD a remaster or dog shit? Dog shit. Do you have good faith or SE for the future? Like they need to respect a bit the fan base and hear what people have to say. I have no expectations at all, be them good or bad. I just don't know where the hell things are going right now with Square, to be honest. I don't know if things are cooked. I don't know if things are going to be okay. I don't know. I don't know if they've learned any lessons from any of this or if they're going to continue to repeat the same mistakes. Anything is possible. I don't have any firm idea on this. Have you actually tried out the turn-based options in Remake and Rebirth enough to judge? I don't think I consider classic mode good, personally. I guess no, I've never done like a full classic mode playthrough. But I don't think I would say classic mode is like is good. I think for the game to like for something like that to be good, yeah, you kind of have to design a whole game around it. And also too with classic mode, I don't think you really have to engage nearly as much. They're not turn-based. They're pretending to be turn-based. If anything, they're more like Dissidia Duodecim's RPG mode. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Sony even marketed the Crash Bandicoot remakes as remasters to communicate how faithful they were, even though they are like literally everything has been remade, which is crazy. So they remade the whole game and then they called it a remaster. And that makes things even more confusing. And Spyro is the same way, so. Mad Kaiser, thank you so much for the super. I appreciate it, brother. Classic mode is not turn based, not in the way people are asking for. That's clearly obvious. Yeah. Yeah, it's not. Really, what's so different? You pick commands from a menu. If, I mean, do if you play Final Fantasy, like most of them, I mean, you could play it on wait mode or active mode, I guess, and enemies will attack. But like the characters themselves won't attack. So the difference is the agency, and also there are no turns. So that's also kind of a thing. Generally, you need turns in order for like something to be turn based. So that's probably something they should look into. Like actually, classic mode in Raid Trilogy is a poor man's Xenoblade combat in some ways. Auto attacking, you just use skills. Actually, yeah, yeah. Or like a poor man, like generally like tab target. I mean, FF is Mario. What's the difference? You just press buttons to make actions happen. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could get into the difference of like is ATB a form of turn based or not, which is a matter of nuance. But ultimately, if you have ATB on wait mode, especially, I would definitely consider it turn based because even though the turns are decided by the timer, there are still clearly defined segmented turns that characters take, and those actions can't be interrupted. And so you're still kind of taking turns in ATB for the most part, unless it's like FF13, for example. Um, Command based and turn based can oftentimes be a flat circle. Sometimes there's a little bit of separation, but you can definitely argue that classic mode is command based, but it's not turn based. There are no turns, and classic mode lacks that. Yes, classic mode does not have turns. Characters do not take turns. There's no turns. It's all happening in real time. Some would argue that I guess that like the characters are attacking in real time. You choose commands, but you see what I'm saying? Matt Kaiser, thank you so much for the super chat. We're not entirely cooked yet. Recently, Seven Rebirth and Elliot have been doing well based on the new financial reports. Yeah, actually, we were talking about that earlier. So it's good to see that those games are doing well. I'm just hoping that uh, they will actually reveal the numbers soon. Because once they reveal the numbers, I think that is going to build mega hype for Revelation if they're as good as they say. They just dropped news that Hamaguchi and Indo will be at PAX. Oh shit, really? Take a look at that. But I'm not too surprised. They're probably going to promote Revelation. So I'm actually pretty excited for that. Like character field placement isn't a consideration of ATB games compared to any action classic combat, right? And also too, even in classic mode, I think you're able to just directly take control of the character at any time. So there's that. And the characters are auto attacking. And then between the auto attacks, you just occasionally you can use a command. Um yeah, you can override the movement, right? So at any point I can just start doing that. And like in a turn-based game, you can't just like I'm gonna start running around with Joker. I'm gonna start moving Joker around the battlefield. I'm gonna start doing dodges and parries and stuff. And that's even more apparent in Rebirth, right? Because I'm pretty sure that like in Rebirth Classic mode, it's not like Cloud is gonna do parries in the classic mode, but you could just start doing parries in the middle of that. I guess if you want to make it clear obscure. I think the fact that the conversation has become more this shows how far FF has drifted. The differences are clear, apparent, and self-evident between classic and turn-based. Well, yeah, and also I think too, no other series has this problem because no other series has tried to be so many different things to so many different people in a quest to kind of expand itself. I don't think we'd be having this conversation about Dragon Quest or I mean maybe Persona because there's a dividing line between Persona 1 and 2 duology and 3 onward. But even then it's just more like do you like the new one or the old one? I like the new one. Fuck you. I like the old one. Right? It's not that complicated, but for Final Fantasy, it's like I like 12. Fuck you. I like 13. I like 15. I like 16. And they're like all entirely different. Gosh, thank you for the tier one. Thank you for being with us for 78 months. God damn, how many years is that? That's a lot of years, bro. 6 years, maybe? Thank you, dude. Jesus. Yeah. Yeah, it's so many sub-series too. And they can't manage all of the fans of all of those sub-series. So, um, unfortunately, some people will be served and some people will not. And uh honestly, most of us will not won't be served because FF17 will probably be like an entirely different thing. So some people are wanting it to be like 7R combat or like 10 combat or like traditional ATB, or some have been like like whatever the fuck. It's not going to be any of that. It's going to be something like else. So, uh don't hope too hard, bros. Okay. I think we'll call it a stream there. What a great stream, guys. As you know, we will be back on Friday. So I hope you're all looking forward to that. I love you guys so much. Please take care. And I'll see you then. Peace.